Hello, everyone. Welcome, board members and manager, to this May 23rd, 2022 public hearing and regular board meeting for the Board of Water Supply, where our mission is to provide safe, dependable, and affordable supply of water now and into the future. The public hearing will be held first, and then we'll proceed to our regular board meeting. The Honolulu Board of Water Supply public hearing notice was published on May 13, 2022 in the Star Advertiser. The purpose of the public hearing is to allow public testimony on the proposed budget. I would like to go over some virtual meeting regulations required by law. Board members attending any board meeting remotely must be visible to the public to be considered present and meet quorum guidelines. Board members participating remotely must also disclose their location and anyone present at their location during roll call. The public will be allowed to attend the Board of Water Supply board meeting at the BWS Public Service Building here at 630 South Baratania Street, Honolulu, Hawaii, 96843. You can also attend via interactive conference technology. A mask is not required to be worn at this time. My name is Board Chair Brian Andaya. I'd like to take a moment to take roll call of the board members. When I call your name, please say aye and disclose your location and anyone present at your location. Madam Secretary?
Vice Chair Capuz Pearl.
I'm working remotely from my home office and I am alone, but I still have my door closed. Mahalo.
Board Member Max Ford.
Present in the boardroom.
Board Member Nalehu Anthony.
I am alone in one of my offices.
Board Member Jay Kuchai.
And I'm alone in my office.
Board Member John Sepchek.
Hi, and I'm alone in my office in Kapolei.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Also in the room with us, our manager, Ernest Lau, Board Secretary Joy Cruz Achu, and also monitoring via WebEx is Information Specialist, Mr. Steven Nordstrom. Also on the telephone or WebEx is Jessica Wong from our City and County Corporation Council Department. Those who are calling or video conferencing in, please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. If you should have a question, enter a motion or second a motion on an action item, or if you want to make a comment or want to applaud something or someone, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself before continuing to speak. As a reminder, those that are participating remotely, please mute your microphone at this time. Unmute when you intend to speak. If you encounter technical issues during today's meeting, please use the WebEx chat to send a direct message to our support team. Their names are listed in the message to all WebEx participants. To open the chat window, please click or tap on the text bubble icon on the right side of the WebEx toolbar. Testimony were accepted as follows. Written testimony, mail written testimony, online testimony. We are at this time currently still accepting telephone testimony. The number to call if you'd like to testify is 808-748-6040. Again, that number is 808-748-6040. Callers will be placed in the queue and be broadcast to testify one at a time. And just hang on for further instructions if you decide to call in. We also are accepting in-person testimony during the meeting from the lobby of the Board of Water Supply here at our public service building located at 630 South Baratania Street, Honolulu, Hawaii. Those wishing to provide in-person testimony will be placed in a queue and brought up to testify here in our boardroom one at a time. All right, meeting materials or the board packet as defined by HRS section 92-7.5 are accessible at www.boardofwatersupply.com/boardmeetings. This meeting is also viewable via live streaming on the BWS website at www.boardofwatersupply.com/live. Video will all appear on the screen. You may have to click on the arrow on video to start it. You may have to unmute audio, as muted audio tends to be the default setting. I'd like to introduce our manager and chief engineer, Ernest Lau, to give a brief overview of the budget that will be presented today.
Thank you, Chair. I actually have the pleasure of introducing Raylin Nakabayashi, head of our Executive Support Office, and she'll provide a short presentation on the operating budget, and also our capital improvement budget. We'll have the program administrator, Mr. Jason Takaki, provide that presentation of the proposed FY 2022-23 CIP. Raylin, how's your voice?
It's okay, I think. You can hear me, right? It's a little scratchy, but it's coming back.
Okay.
So thank you, manager. Thank you, chair and members. Just give me 1 second to share my screen. So before I get started for the board, I just wanted to note, this is the same budget in total that it was presented to you at the budget workshop on May 9th. There was one change to a CIP project in title and not in amount though. So the budget that you're going to see is the same and the presentation that Jason and I are covering the same. But for the purpose of the public hearing, we will go over the entire presentation again. So I'm going to do an overview of the operating budget and the capital improvement program budget. Jason will get into the details on the CIP. So overall, fiscal year 2023, the operating budget increases by 10.3%, or a little over about $22.1 million. The capital improvement program budget increases or remains about flat, 0.6% increase, or $1.1 million. Presented here are our operating and CIP budgets, operating in green, CIP in orange, for fiscal years 19 to current, or fiscal year 23. This is represented in millions of dollars. As you can see, our operating budgets have consistently grown due to increases in personnel costs, materials, supplies, and services, and the additional debt service costs from our bond issuances. There was a pretty sharp increase in fiscal year 23, which we will discuss in further detail on the coming slides. And the CIP budgets, with the exception of fiscal year 21, which was kind of an anomaly. We bumped that year up with a budget amendment, but they're also steadily increasing as we work to achieve our water master plan goal of replacing 21 miles of pipeline per year. While the amount of the CIP budget in fiscal year 23 aligns with that long-range financial plan, there was a shift in focus on projects for fiscal year 23 in light of our Red Hill crisis and our need to find additional source capacity. So Jason can go over some of the highlights of the 23 CIP budget when we get there. So as you know, our total operating budget is based on or crafted in consideration of our constraints, which would be the total resources available to us. The total resources in fiscal year 23 is $302 million. And that is made up of our beginning balance, which is a carryover for prior years on our operating fund, revenues, and any lapses or adjustments to come up to that total resources. In alignment with our long-range financial plan, we have been working to maintain only enough financial reserves as is required by our financial policies. And each year we've worked to maintain or reduce that carryover balance And that is reflected, as you can see, in its decline going forward. So this is a chart showing you that total resources versus total expenditures in millions of dollars since fiscal year 2018 to current. So fiscal years 2018, 19, and 20 are represented by actuals. And 21 are actuals. 22 is the year that's going on right now, so that's just the budgeted figures. And 23 is the budget that's before you for consideration today. So the column to the left, which is made up of green, orange, and this like rust or red color, that's your total resources. So the green color represents the revenues. The orange is the fund balance or the carryover from prior years. And the red are any lapses or adjustments for that year. The purple column to the right, which are represent the expenditures in those years. So there has been an effort, I think you can see it graphically here too, to reduce that carryover. Reducing the carryover and funding our CIP, our capital improvement program, with a mix of both revenue bonds and cash does allow us to pursue smaller incremental rate increases as we move forward, rather than carrying or accruing all that cash to fund the CIP. We're doing a blend of CIP and a blend of cash and revenue bonds to fund our CIP. So I mentioned a few times our board adopted financial policies. So one of which is our debt service coverage. Our debt service coverage per board resolution is to maintain a minimum of 1.6 times debt service coverage on all debt. As of fiscal year 21, the June 30 end of fiscal year 21, our senior debt coverage is at 3.5 times and all-in debt coverage is at 2.59. The other board financial policy that we keep our eye on is our net working capital. And then the financial policy is to maintain no more than 180 days, but no less than 60 days. Sorry. As the end of June 30, 2021, we were at 105 days. So our operating fund expenditures for fiscal year 2023 are proposed at $296.1 million. And that's made up of $58.9 million for the capital improvement program, $59.5 million for fixed charges, $34.5 million for debt service, $5.1 million for equipment, $86.7 million for materials, supplies, and services. That's our largest expenditure category, and personnel services at 51.4. Of the 58.9 million, so that's the yellow, that is being funded, operating fund in the CIP. 500,000 of that is eligible for reimbursement from the state of Hawaii Department of Health State Revolving Fund Loan Program. So instead of a pie chart, this is a historical bar chart from fiscal years 2019 to current. Again, 19, 20, 21 are actuals because those years are done. 22 is still ongoing. So those are the budget figures. And 23 is the budget before you today. So you'll notice that the operating funded CIP expenditures, at least in fiscal year 19 and or 19 at least, were much more, this is the yellow, than they are now. And that's reflective of the fact that fiscal year 20 was the first year where we started issuing revenue bonds to also fund the CIP. So the size of the CIP has grown, and the amount of operating fund we or move into the CIP to fund our projects is less because of the revenue bond supplement. That is a part of our long range financial plan to use a mix of bonds and cash to fund our program going forward. And as we continue to grow the CIP and use that mix of financing to go forward, you will also see the growth in, sorry, my camera is blocking my notes, fixed charges, or I mean debt service, which is that, I don't know what color it is for you guys, like pink. That continues to steadily grow as we issue more and more revenue bonds. Also, I'll go over this in the next few slides, but you'll see that material supplies and services has grown quite substantially over the prior years. That's the blue color. This is due in part to a lot of things, but there's Red Hill. We've got a big upgrade coming to one of our main systems, our customer database. And there's also what we're facing right now is inflation with some of our fixed charges like electricity and fuel. So this just compares, instead of 6 years, we're looking at just last year versus this year. So the operating budget is approximately 22.1 million more, or 10.27% more. And the largest increase, of course, is in the material supplies and services area, followed by an increase in fixed charges and an increase in debt service. So getting into the highlights of our operating budget, as far as personnel, there is no net increase in full-time equivalent employees. Our department staffing remains below our authorized by the board at 741 FTE. And at the time the budget was prepared, and even right now, there are no, I guess, collective bargaining agreements that are fully ratified and complete. So the fiscal year 23 budget remains essentially flat, where there's a $40,000 decrease, $40,000 decrease, or 0.1%. We continue on with our human resources initiatives to optimize and expand our operational capacity through reorgs and leveraging of technology. And we continue aggressive recruitment by placing our positions in as many or additional venues as possible. So material supplies and services, this is where there was a large increase. This is primarily due to over $10 million is due to two initiatives, the biggest of which is our upgrade to our customer account system. We call it CCMB. You'll see a $4.3 billion increase in the information technology division that accounts for that system upgrade. It's been about 10 years since we pursued an upgrade, so this is much needed and we have to pursue it this year. And then the other large increase is in the water quality division, and that is additional funding to address the impacts from Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility crisis. The remaining increase is a 2.1% increase, so it's like $4.5 million. That is consistent with our long-range financial plan. The $4.5 million, though, is broken down into an increase in contractual services of $2.2 million. You'll see that in both field operations to address maintenance on our regulated dams. It's for ground maintenance, groundskeeping. And you'll see that in both the information technology division and executive support. And that is to improve and maintain essentially both our physical and cyber security. You'll also see increases in professional services of 1.5 million, and that's both in the water resources and capital projects division. And that is to support the staff as they work to implement our water master plan and the increasing capital improvement program budgets. And you'll also see increases to treatment expenses. Those are reflected in other materials and supplies and non-potable water treatment plant costs. And that's about $995,000 or just shy of $1 million. So our equipment budget is up $486,000, which is 10% more than last year. And equipment is, again, for the new and replacement fleet vehicles or fleet equipment. That's construction equipment and vehicles. But of that increase, there's $1 million budgeted for 2 new mobile generators. And we actually got 2 grant awards via HIEMA. It's FEMA grant awards, the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, to pay 75% of the cost of these generators. So while the BWS will go ahead and procure those upfront, on the back end, FEMA will reimburse us 75% of their cost. And one of the places that I mentioned that we are growing and will continue to grow as we issue more revenue bonds is debt service. So you see there a $4.9 million increase, or over 10%, 10.9%. And it's 4.4 of that is an increase in principal and interest payments on those bonds payable, and 506,000 is an increase on SRF payments. Fixed charges is where you find costs like our electricity and fuel, and you will see an increase, a pretty large increase there in fixed charges of $5.8 million, or 10.9%. Most of that, the majority, 4.1 million, is for the electricity costs, which are forecasted to be much higher. We're not forecasting using more, it's just the cost for electricity is going up. And there's an increase in employee benefits, such as the employee retirement system and health benefits for both our employees and retirees. That's about $1.7 million. So now we get into the revenue part of the budget. We are projecting our revenues to increase by about 9.8 million, or 3.9%. And as you know, most of our revenue is made up from our metered water sales, and they're projected to increase by 9.5 million, or 4%. And this is based on historical usage and then the rate adjustment that we have scheduled for July 1st, 2023. Other revenues, which are made up of things like installation charges and merchandise and jobbing, interest expense, that is projected to increase by a small amount as well, 220,000, and that's primarily due to interest income. So this is a breakdown of the revenues. As you can tell, it's almost all metered sales, potable and non-potable and recycled. And then the other revenues category is much smaller. So this is what our operating fund revenues have looked like historically in millions. So I did fiscal years 20 and 21. Those are the budgeted to the left and then actual to the right. And the colors, so green is our potable, non-potable water, recycled water is in orange, and then other revenues in red. So as you can see, 20 and 21, the revenues, well, 20 especially, I think was a wetter year, and a lot of our metered sales are driven by the weather. So it was a wetter year. We didn't have as much. There was also the pandemic that we're contending with towards the latter half of fiscal year 20, and then kind of into 2021, where there was, I guess, the shutdown of Hawaii as a tourist location. So there were some of our biggest users, like in Waikiki, weren't using as much as they used to. 21, our revenues kind of caught up again. Actual was very close to budgeted. 22, the budget was, again, it's a combination of what the rate schedule is and then the historical usage. So revenues were projected for 22, and actually we're looking at coming in above budget on the revenues by the end of fiscal year 22. And that again is a combination of weather and the rate schedule. So 22, as compared to some of these prior years, has been a much drier year. Through the winter and the spring, it was not as rainy as it was in prior years, increasing the usage. COVID is also we're reopening up again. So there's more water usage in like the tourist areas, Waikiki. Those things combined though are, we have our forecast for 22 to come in higher than budgeted. And then when you layer on fiscal year 23, the historical usage, and then the new rate schedule that's coming in starting on July 1st, that's how we came to our projection for fiscal year 23. So in total, our revenues are expected to go up by almost 10 million, $9.8 million, or 3.9%. Unfortunately, though, our operating expenditures are outpacing the increase in our revenues. So that's projected to increase by about $14.9 million, or 5.3%. And that brings me to this kind of busy slide, but it's essentially what I want to close on before Jason starts on the CIP, is that we do have a projected increase in revenue. Our fund balance, we're monitoring, there's still carryover, which gave us a larger base or total resources to work with while planning the budget. but that is being outweighed by some of the things that we're facing right now. We've got on the right side for me, I think it's on the right side for everyone. We've got Red Hill that we're contending with. We have 3 sources offline, looking for new sources. We have increased testing going on because of Red Hill. That's increased manpower, increased contractual services, increased legal fees as we move forward on Red Hill. Then we'll also have the upgrade that is required to our customer account system to CCMB. It has been 10 years. We must upgrade that customer account. It's a very important database. It needs to be kept updated for its own cybersecurity and its functionality. And then we're dealing with everywhere, like everyone else, inflation right now. I mean, the fuel costs, thank goodness for, I guess, managers, foresight and the water resources and capital projects and everyone who works so hard on our energy savings performance contract to get photovoltaic in. But even with that, the cost for electricity, even though our usage is slowly coming down as much as it can for the places that we put PV in, just the cost for electricity and fuel right now is just far outstripping any kind of conservation efforts we can put in there. On the plus side, though, we are entering into our cost of service study right now. Thank you to all of our board members. We've also been working on our strategic planning for the next 5 years. And a lot of these things we will factor in as we move forward. It's just 23. We were kind of just presented with all of these challenges, and the budget reflects the growth and what it would take in resources to address everything that's been presented to us today. So I can stop there, and then it goes into Jason. If you had any questions on the operating side, though, I am happy to take them now.
Yeah, Raylene Max Sword.
Hi, Max.
Real quick on, where do you put your gasoline or fuel expenditures? Is it in the fixed charges?
Yes, that's in fixed
Okay,
charges,
then
which
my-
is, oh, sorry.
Yeah, then my question is, because you put 5.8 million, 4.1 for electricity, 1.7 for employee benefits. That doesn't leave anything for increase in fuel prices, because, you know, the projection is the fuel prices will keep going up until the end of the year. Nobody
I'm
knows
so
what's beyond the end of the year. So my question is, it doesn't seem that you accounted for that in the increase.
Yes, I'm sorry. So fixed charges on page up, it's OP 76 is the electricity for both the facilities and the water distribution. So electricity and then the employee benefits are on OP 76. You'll see our fuel budget, though, actually, I'm sorry, it's in automotive, I think.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. And that is page OP 62. So gasoline is but
Okay, I just want to make sure that you know, it's accounted for on your budget. My second question is more for the general public, because we did discuss it at the briefing, and that's of course the big gorilla in the room, which is Red Hill. Maybe for the dissemination to the public, you know, are we getting any help from the feds in shouldering the cost of what we need to do to rectify Red Hill?
so, manager, did you want me to take this or did you wanna?
Maybe you can share about the ARPA funds as a way to
Sure.
help. Yeah.
So yes, there was the appropriation, the American Rescue Plan Act, I think that's ARPA, and there was I think entitlements to each state and local government. They're called fiscal recovery funds or FRF funds. Our city and county of Honolulu also received FRF funds, and we put in applications. So these FRF funds are not meant to address Red Hill or anything, but it was an infusion of federal funding at the state and local levels to address this is coming off of the coronavirus pandemic and the effects on the economy. Those FRF funds, though, do have a time frame in which they can be used. They must be encumbered by December 2024 and fully expended by December 2026. So thank you to Jason, guys, who's coming on next to do the CIP budget, but they were able to identify some projects that we requested these fiscal recovery funds for. that will meet those timelines. So that's $25.3 million of federal funds. These projects, except for one, which is only a planning and engineering project right now, don't really have anything to do with Red Hill. The Red Hill developing new source, and I guess getting that into production and replacing that, that's not necessarily something that can be done in that FRF timeframe where you're completely done by 2026. We have to find new source. We have to design, plan, and engineer how we're going to bring that source into the system. So those things could not make the timeframe for FRF. Those projects still have to be identified, conceptualized, designed, engineered before we can move forward. What we also did though is requested a congressionally directed spending, what they call earmarks. We submitted a request for earmarks to Senator Schatz of $195 million. And that for us, we have conceptualized about, and Barry or Ernie, jump in if I'm misstating this, about 13 million gallons of potentially new source. We really have to drill the exploratory wells, test them, and see how much the yield will be. So it's all very conceptual at this point. But we've identified some new source. We've identified places in which our system can be interconnected to drop source into existing source into the Metro Honolulu area. And we've done our best estimate at cost for that. And that came out to $195 million. And that's an estimate for today. Of course, all of this changes once we actually get those exploratory wells in. The engineers actually get their chance to evaluate yield and cost to bring that water into the distribution system. But we did do that as well. The earmark, it was a request to Senator Schatz. We'll be following up with letters to the entire delegation, hoping for their support with some earmarked money. This is a long-term kind of solution that we're looking for here. Max day demand that was lost was 17.5 million gallons per day. To make up that kind of what do we call it? Delta, I guess. It's going to take a lot of looking for new source. And it's going to take a lot of wells. Halava Shaft produced a ton, right? Right now, there's nothing on our, I guess our plan, what we put in the earmark, that can produce in a single location as much as Halava Shaft does. So you're talking about multiple wells, multiple areas, that all of that combined will hopefully try to get us to the source that we're missing.
So there's that federal earmark request to the senator's office.
Yeah.
But also more recently, we asked the state and federal regulators on the Red Hill issue to actually consider making it a requirement for the Department of Defense to actually make us whole, to cover our costs to mitigate the situation.
Yeah, that's a question I get asked all the time. When
Yeah,
people
so
read it.
I brought it up at the recent Fuel Tank Advisory Committee meeting. And I asked the State Department of Health and also the US EPA, who was on the same meeting, to consider making that a requirement as part of their, if it's within their legal authority, but to require the Department of Defense, actually the Navy, to make us whole in terms of our costs to deal with the situation.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Good job with that description.
Thank you. And I'm sorry about my voice again. It's coming back.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the report. Any questions? Anyone else? Okay, if not, we can always ask, I guess at the end of this agenda item, but we can move on now to the capital improvement program budget update. Mr. Kakaki?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Andaya, and welcome and good afternoon, Chair and board members. This is the FY 2023 Capital Improvement Program budget. The annual CIP is our commitment to the future of the water system. The annual program is compiled by the Capital Projects Division and includes projects from all divisions and staff offices. The CIP supports the department's mission and vision and is aligned with the Water Master Plan, the department's strategic plan, which is currently being updated, each division's goals and objectives in support of these plans, and the 6-year long-range capital improvement program. Next, please. The CIP carefully balances the needs of the water system in providing safe, reliable drinking water service with cost-effective management of assets and funding. Next, please. The CIP is again comprised of 3 project categories: research and development, renewal and replacement, and capacity expansion. Next, please. And this matrix shows the project categories and the sources of funding. The sources include the operating fund that Raylene just presented, funding through low interest loans from the Department of Health State Revolving Fund, the SRF, the Special Expendable Fund, which are collections of water system facility charges that fund system expansions, the Improvement Fund, which is revenue bond funding, and the Extramural Fund for external funding provided to the Board of Water Supply. In the case of FY 2023, this is, as Raylene mentioned, federal funds through the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA. The total for FY 23 is shown in the bottom right-hand corner there. It is just over 180 million at $181,109,325. Next, please. As we all know, the municipal water system is massive and diverse. This map simply illustrates the distribution of this year's design and construction projects around the island as we manage an island-wide municipal water system. Next, please. So these are the highlights. We begin with category 1. $20 million is proposed for this project category. This year's program includes significant funding for well design and construction, both exploratory wells as possible replacements for sources offline due to the Red Hill fuel contamination, and also monitoring wells to serve as sentinels to warn of the movement of an underground fuel plume from the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility. We will also continue our construction management program that provides additional field expertise and training for the capital projects construction management branch. And finally, we're drilling an exploratory well for development of an additional production well at the site of the existing Manoa Wells 2 station. Next, please. Category 2 is our largest category and addresses the needs of an aging infrastructure. A total of $98 million is allocated in this project category and includes projects to perform renovations and renewals to aging facilities. 2 wells currently out of service at Mililani Wells 4 will be replaced, and renovation and upgrades will be performed at the existing Haleiwa Wells and Honolulu Wells 2 facilities. Haleiwa Wells is one of the ARPA projects. Next, please. Category 2 also includes main replacements as we work toward a target goal prescribed in the Board of Water Supply Water Master Plan. Since the implementation of the Water Master Plan began in FY18, the gradually expanding main replacement program has awarded over 31 miles of main replacement prior to the current FY22 fiscal year, where 10 more miles are planned. This year, however, meaning FY23, we will scale back our main replacement program to provide funding and staff capacity for higher priority projects, including the design and construction required to address the Red Hill crisis. Construction projects to replace 4.1 miles of main are included in FY23 in areas stretching from Maili to Foster Village to Diamond Head. And this is below our annual target of 11 miles, and we will look to catch up in future years. Funding for approximately 5 miles of main replacement design projects are also included in the annual budget for future pipeline projects. Next, please. Other renewal and replacement needs include replacement of the failing Wilhelmina Rise 811 reservoir, funded again under ARPA, The installation of provisions to allow the connection of mobile generators to power critical pumping facilities in the event of an HECO outage, and also upgrades and updates to pump station instrumentations and controls at various facilities. Next, please. In FY23, we will address regulatory requirements and dam safety concerns with improvements to the dam at Nuuanu Reservoir Number 1. And we continue upkeep of our pumps and facilities around the island while continuing to upgrade security at all Board of Water Supply facilities. Next, please. Final category is capacity expansion and is primarily comprised of two initiatives. The first is $17 million for the design, build, operate, maintain project delivery approach for a desalination facility at Kalailoa. And this is on 20 acres of land made available to the Board of Water Supply by the Barbers Point base closure. Another $4 million is being appropriated for the installation and testing of up to 5 exploratory wells for source development in the vicinity of the Eva Shaft Tunnel. Now, this concludes the highlights of this year's CIP, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have on the CIP projects.
Members, is any questions?
This is not Alehu. Jason, I just have maybe a question or a comment. If you can go back to the well slides from Mililani. So those wells are currently offline now.
Mililani wells 4, there are 4 pumps there, 2 are offline right now, yes.
So in any typical year, around how many pumps come up for this kind of renovation?
I'm not sure. We do quite a few pump replacements. Like in the current fiscal year, I would count maybe 12 or more. We use a indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract that can quickly do pump replacements. And so those are budgeted in the CIP as a lump sum under pump renewal and replacement. And so in FY23, that amount is $3.5 million.
And we wait for these to fail and then you utilize that contract to quickly replace.
Yes, most instances, yes. And in most instances as well, we have standby capacity. So it's intended that we will have the ability to pump even should a pump go down.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Any further questions? If not, I got a few. Mr. Takaki, going to the summary CIP program budget FY 2023 summary. Construction cost index. Can you explain what that is and how that's determined?
The construction cost index was a separate account line that was created in the CIP back in, my guess, is 2008, when we had the big decline in the economy, and then we had rapidly rising prices. And so to make sure that we had funding in the budget to cover overages above the budgeted amounts, the fiscal officer at the time created the construction cost index. This year, it is budgeted at 15%, I believe, of all construction budgeted line items.
Okay. And then what is contract adjustment?
Contract adjustment is another account set up within the CIP, and it is budgeted. It is anticipated needs for ongoing projects. So if we have ongoing projects that we think we're going to need to do a change order or contract modification, they will plan on that and put a budget number to it and include that in the CIP.
Okay. Would it be possible to get the trend on this for the last 5 years? This contract adjustment number?
Yeah, we can provide a graph later.
Okay, thank you.
Do you also want to see something on the construction cost index account too?
Yes,
Okay.
because I mean, that's a large item. It's more than the renewal. It's actually the largest item. It's larger than research and development. It's larger than renewal and replacement.
Like,
Um,
Jason, maybe you can explain the purpose behind the construction cost index account.
or contract adjustment.
Contract adjustment is ongoing existing projects, and it's budgeted based on anticipated changes that we see needed on those projects.
Are there problems on those projects?
Like with
we anticipate?
any projects, you'll encounter challenges or things that are unforeseen that you have to deal with. That's a matter of what construction's like.
Yep.
And Jason, how much ongoing construction projects, what is the value of what we got right now? Do you know?
Oh, you are jumping into my next report, but that is, there are $364 million in ongoing construction projects. I will say that, yes, I think the construction contract adjustment, or not necessarily construction, is the contract adjustment account is higher in the proposed FY23 than in previous years. And this is because we anticipate delay claims related to projects that we had budgeted, awarded, executed, but are not able to proceed with.
Did I hear delay claims?
Delay claims, yes.
Can you explain further?
If we execute a budget, we will tell the contractor, and rightfully so, when they can proceed with the work. If it goes beyond that anticipated time, they are due. And so in that case, when we would then issue a stop work order, they would be due the costs some of their costs related to that delay. And in the case of FY23, there are a number of projects that from our FY22 program that have not proceeded yet because of delays in getting permits and approvals.
Yeah, sometimes it happens where a key permit is just delayed with an external agency that is responsible for that permit. And we can't proceed until we get their approval.
I guess only because it's such a large amount. If we could maybe get further detail on that, what's causing these delay claims?
We'd be glad to provide that information.
Because I know I'm kind of springing this on you.
Yeah, not a problem. We can maybe at the next report on the CIP, we can provide you a kind of a recap of what are the some of the causes of delays.
Okay, thank you.
Jason, remember that, okay?
And then I also wanted to go into the actual budget itself. So I'm looking at CIP 4 and I guess CIP 4 through 6. And I'm just wondering because, I just see a bunch of numbers here for different projects. Do we have, for example, number 16? It's a Palolo water system improvement.
Ray, can you bring up the budget itself and go to those pages?
Yes, doing it right now.
Okay, thanks. Chair, if you could wait a moment so that the public can actually see this.
Yep.
So our CIP 2 through 6.
4 through 6 or
4 through,
CIP 4.
sorry.
So like, for example, for number 16, the Palolo Water System Improvements, Part 4, we have, it looks like budgeted from our improvement funds, 11 million. Like, how do we, I'm just trying to get a sense, how do we come up with that kind of number?
How do we come up with the budgeted amount?
Yes,
Well, based on past bid results.
for similar projects.
Right. Yeah, so they'll look at the footage, the size of the mains, but they'll also look at the area and the type of anticipated geology that the contractor will be addressed with. Traffic control is a big deal nowadays. So it depends on the location of the project, but all of those go into determining an engineer's estimate on the cost of the project.
Okay, so I guess when I had asked previously about some metrics, I think this is exactly the things that I was kind of hoping to get. Obviously there's a system in coming up with like this kind of figure 11 million. It's based on historical projects and based on the things Mr. Takaki had mentioned, the area, the size, the
Engineer's estimate, yeah.
right. Is it possible, I guess maybe along with the next report, to get, not for every project, but for the big ones, maybe kind of a little bit more information on the past projects that's, helping to determine this kind of budget number? So we can see the change over time, if any?
Okay, we can, I think, well, yeah, we'll see what we can do. You're talking linear or dollar amount per foot, something like that? And the change over time?
I mean, yeah, eventually, and I do appreciate that it's very difficult. There's so many different factors. Like, for example, maybe this particular area has maybe the ground is different from another. So I know that it's not gonna be an exact science, it's gonna be almost like comparing apples to oranges. But if we could just kind of see a little bit.
Jason, maybe what you could do is actually we can describe the process to come up with the estimate, the basis for the engineer's estimate, and the methodology we use to come up with that
Yeah,
estimate.
methodology.
Yeah, well, and you're right, the projects will differ one to the next, depending on what's involved in the project. If there's a stream crossing, something like that, then yes, and deep excavation, all of those things are taken into account. So there is, for each project, a bid proposal, so line items for the different components of the project. And an estimate is provided by the consultant as well as done by our staff on each of those to determine what we think will be the bid amounts. Of course, and it's difficult right now because of the changes in costs, but yes, we can put together a summary, and in fact, I have the numbers here, but they are very different year to year. It depends on the size of the project. Also makes a difference on how much it costs per foot or per mile.
And Jason, maybe you can do is select a project and kind of walk the board through the example of that particular project to show what the unique challenges are coming up with the estimate. Like in this Palolo water system, there are a lot of different streams in Palolo too. So like you mentioned stream crossings. If this project includes some of those stream crossings, they're usually quite expensive. But we can do that.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that's it. I just kind of want to make sure, if stakeholders ask me, how do you know that the budget numbers are really,
Yeah.
being, wisely.
Right. And so there's a design consultant's estimate and there's also our staff estimate. We can explain the process.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Anybody have questions? Okay. Thank you very much for the report.
Thanks, Jason. Okay, Ray. Back to the presentation. I think we're at the near the very end.
Oh, yeah, that was Jason closed it. Did you want to see the last slide?
Yeah,
Okay. That was our last slide, with the total operating budget and the CIP budget across the source of funds. For total appropriation, I guess that we're here for, well, that's actually my next item, of $418,349,769 for both the operating and the CIP.
are there any, thank you, Ray. Are there any questions from the board?
Good, board members, any questions? Okay, hearing none, Ms. Cruz Achu, is there any written testimony to present or anyone in person waiting to testify?
Chair, there are no written testimony, no one waiting in the lobby to testify, or no phone call.
Okay, so phone lines are open for public testimony, and could you confirm that there's no one on the phone to testify?
There's no one on the phone to testify.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? All right, if there are no further questions, then I'm going to close the public hearing. All right, thank you, everybody. We are now in the regular meeting, and we have 3 items on our agenda today requiring board action. Item number 1 is requiring board action is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on April 25th, 2022. Madam Secretary, is there any written testimony or anyone in person waiting to testify?
No one's here to testify, no one's on the phone, and no written testimony, Chair.
Thank you. Members, may I entertain a motion to approve the minutes of April 25th, 2022?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Member Sepchek. All right, is there any corrections, additions, amendments to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of approval, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. All right, the motion passes unanimously. Minutes of April 25, 2022 regular meeting is approved. All right, next item is approval of the minutes of the budget workshop meeting, which we held on May 9th, 2022. May I have a motion to approve, please?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second. This is Kapua.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Kuposbro,
Aye.
Board Member Matt Sword,
Aye.
Board Member Nale Anthony,
I'm going to abstain. I was absent.
Board Member Jay Gutai,
Aye.
Board Member Don Sepchek,
Aye.
Chair Ryan Andaya.
Aye.
Chair, motion passes with 5 ayes and 1 abstention.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Let's move then to item number 3, the adoption of resolution number 941, 2022, adopting the operating and capital improvement program budget for fiscal year 2022, 2023, and appropriating funds therefore. Chair recognizes Ms. Raylene Nakabayashi.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. So this is the budget resolution that accompanies the public hearing we just had on the operating and the CIP budgets. Joy, if you could scroll down a little bit. So we're requesting a sum of $237,240,444 be appropriated for the operating fund for our operating budget expenditures, and a total sum of $181,109,325 be appropriated for the capital improvement program budget. And that is split up into $66,123,000 from the improvement fund. I skipped over $58,851,325 from the operating fund. And then the 66 million from the improvement fund, 27,250,000 from the special expendable fund, 28,885,000 in the extramural fund. And Joy, if you could scroll a little bit. So notice of the public hearing was posted in the newspaper prior to the public hearing, and then this is the resolution for your consideration. Sorry, if you could keep scrolling. The first part is the operating budget appropriation, 237 million. And then if you scroll down, we get into the appropriations for the capital improvement program budget for a total of 181 million. Keep scrolling. And then I wanted to, so that's the CIP appropriation. If we keep scrolling, here, stop right here, sorry. On page 4, there is an additional be it further resolved paragraph added to the budget resolution. And this speaks specifically to the monies that we are requesting be appropriated into the extramural fund. This just notes that when monies are received whose use is limited by their source, in this instance, for this budget, they are monies appropriated through the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. When these amounts are received for the projects designated in the CIP, they will be placed in the extramural fund, and the projects themselves also funded from the extramural fund, so that we can keep an accounting of these monies, and they are spent for their designated purposes by law. And scroll down a little bit more, Joy. This paragraph right here, be it further resolved, the expenditure of the monies in the extramural fund are deemed approved by the board, and the manager and chief engineer is authorized to receive and expend the monies in accordance with the law that provided the funds. And then the rest of the budget resolution is everything you've seen before. We do intend to issue revenue bonds in the amounts required to fund the CIP and the projects that are designated to be funded via the improvement fund. We will come back to the board for the resolution to issue said bonds, but it is discussed here. And that is it on the budget resolution. So 2 new be it resolves for the extramural fund appropriation.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Nakabayashi. Ms. Kulichu, Mr. Nordstrom, is there any public testimony on this item authorizing adoption of resolution 941, 2022?
There's no public testimony downstairs and there's no written testimony.
Thank you. Members, can I get a motion to adopt resolution number 941, 2022?
Mr. Chair, I'll go for a three-peat and make that motion for the third for the day.
Thank you very much, Member Soar. Do I hear a second?
Chair, this is Jade. I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any Are there any questions or discussion? Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Prospero,
Aye.
Board Member Max Stewart,
Aye.
Board Member Nalek Anthony,
Aye.
Board Member Jay Gutai,
Aye.
Board Member John Stepchak,
Aye.
Chair Brian Dye.
Aye.
Chair, motion passes with 6 ayes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Manager Lau, Mr. Takaki, Ms. Nakabayashi, the rest of the team, for putting this operating and CIP budget together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, well done, well done, well done.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move now to items for information. And the first item is an update on the Board of Water Supply's response to the potential impacts of the Red Hill fuel contamination. Chair recognizes Mr. Manager Lau.
Okay, thank you, Chair and members. Thanks, Joy, for bringing it up. Just wanted to provide this update, and we'll probably continue this on a monthly basis as long as there's something to report. Next, please. Just a reminder, our vision, and you all know this very well, Calvine Oil and Water for Life. Next, please. And our mission to provide safe, dependable, and affordable water now and into the future for our community. Next, please. And just a reminder, for the folks that are viewing this online, this is a map of the aquifers, freshwater aquifers on the island of Oahu from the State Commission on Water Resources Management. And it shows like the purple Pearl Harbor aquifer being the largest, and Honolulu aquifer is something that we are, and where we're located right now here at Beretania Street, we are served by the Honolulu aquifer and also the Pearl Harbor aquifer. Next, please. And unfortunately, as you all well know, the Red Hill Fuel Facility sits all 20 tanks, and a good portion of that steel pipelines carrying the fuel to and from Pearl Harbor, right above our aquifer between the Honolulu and the Pearl Harbor aquifers. Next, please. This is just a map again, just a reminder. You can see the in black dots, 2 rows of 10 dots representing the Red Hill Bug Fuel Storage Facility. The outline with black dash lines representing the parcel that sits on the Navy property. And about half a mile away is the Red Hill Shaft, which is their Navy water source that was heavily contaminated last year and potentially led to the contamination of the entire water system for serving Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam. Circled in yellow, it's shut off right now, but also circled in yellow, another Navy water source across Halawa Valley. As you get off the freeway going Evabound, you see their other smaller water source called Aya Halawa Shaft. Circled in red are the 3, I guess a reminder here, 3 border water supply wells that are shut down. Just as a reminder, because underneath this whole area of the Halawa Valley, on both the east side or the Red Hill side and on the Halawa side, there's an underground aquifer that's connected, and we're both tapping the same aquifer. And our concerns, as you know, is to keep these wells shut off until we can know that there's no potential for us drawing field tainted water from the underground aquifer and sending it into our water system. Next, please.
Oh, well, before you leave this, I got a quick question. Okay. We approved the 2 monitoring wells a couple of months ago. Approximately where would those be on the map?
Yeah, it's a little hard to see, and I don't have.
Would it be between the Halawa Shaft and the Red Hill Shaft?
Yes. No, it's the Halawa and the Red Hill Fuel Facility. We have some proposed monitor wells that we're going to drill in that area.
Okay.
One that's actually, thank you for bringing it up, because it's actually right now out to bid to find a contractor to drill our monitor well number 8, monitor well H, which is along just on the Eva side of the correctional facility, the Halawa Correctional Facility in Halawa Valley.
Okay.
So We're looking for potential field migration underground in the underground aquifer that might have traveled in a northwesterly direction across Halava Valley. And you can see Halava Shaft is about 5,000 feet across the valley from the Red Hill field tanks.
Okay, so it'd be between the tanks and the Halaba.
Yeah, actually closer to the Red Hill side, near the correctional facility, but in the valley where there's not many wells right now.
Yeah, it doesn't. Okay,
Not
thank
many
you.
test wells.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, please. So at this point, I'm going to turn over to Barry Usagawa, head of our Water Resources Division, to just kind of recap where we're at on water shortage conditions. I just want to say that our assessment right now, board, is that we don't believe that we're going to be headed into critical water shortage conditions this summer. We made some system changes, and as long as we can get some pumps that are offline repaired and in service in Honolulu, we think we're going to be at the most, maybe in the alert water shortage condition, which is voluntary conservation only. But I'll turn it over to Barry to explain in more detail. Barry?
Thank you, Ernie, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Yeah, so as Ernie was saying, we've reassessed our water shortage condition. We made one important adjustment in our water system where our water system's operations have redirected one of the sources, Kamilo well pump, from the Honolulu system to the IAEA system. And that increased the amount of capacity we have in IAEA. So now IAEA is drops from critical to alert. Just stepping back a bit, a no shortage condition is when our available pumps are running 16 hours a day or less, and this is during the max day demand. So we haven't reached the summer months yet, but in the summer months, if we can pump under 16, it's determined to be a no water shortage condition. An alert is when those pumps operate in 20 hours, and in critical when those pumps run 22 hours. So it's not in that situation yet, but it's estimated, we anticipate it being in the alert where our pumps are operating in 20 hours. So it's still a water shortage condition. It's still a serious situation, but not as if it was in critical water shortage condition. And so the progressive water conservation response for an alert is voluntary, targeted seasonal messaging requesting 10% water use reduction. So it doesn't trigger the mandatory conservation tactics that would be associated with the critical condition. Next. So we've seen this before. This is the IAEA Halava system from Waimalu Stream in the west to Iwaiana Street in the right. Next.
Oh, just real quick, just that looks like a golf course in the middle. Would that be
Pearl Country
Pearl
Club.
Country Club?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Yes.
Barry, they have their own well, right? For Pearl Country
Yes,
Club?
they have their own. Yes.
For irrigation, so that's not from the Board of Water Supply, just in case you were wondering.
Okay.
Yeah, we provide water only to the clubhouse and maintenance facility and the restrooms. The irrigation is from a well. Thanks.
So, just to follow up on that question real quick. Since they have their own well at the Pearl Country Club, do we share aquifer with them or?
We are tapping the same aquifer that they're pumping from too.
Okay, and then, so my question is, how do we monitor so they don't overpump?
So this whole area, actually, most of the island of Oahu, except for the Waianae Coast, is what they call a groundwater management area, which is under the regulation of the Commission on Water Resources Management, the State Water Commission, implementing the water code. And actually, Kapua could really talk to this in detail, but they regulate how much we can pump. Any user of groundwater here, how much they can withdraw from the groundwater resources based on a water use permit.
So they monitor what they pump.
They're required to, like we do, report our use, our pumping from our wells to the Water Commission. They monitor compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. So you've seen this before. We've added a couple of lines here. This is the historical weekly pumping, weekly average pumping for the Aiea Halava water system from January 2021 to present. And what you can the blue arrow on the left is for the same time period as the green arrow on the right. So you can compare the production levels year to year, about the same. In fact, I think there's more fluctuations last year. But what we've added was the critical water shortage condition, which is the blue dotted line at the top, and that's 4.4 million gallons per day. And the alert is red at 4. So previously, before we redirected Camilo to the system, the critical level was down at 4. And so it gave us more room to accommodate fluctuations in water demand. So that difference between alert and critical is 0.4 MGD or 400,000. Just wanted to note that for when we get into the demands. The next slide. This is the Honolulu system from Salt Lake to Hawaii Kai, but our sources extend all the way from Waipahu into town. Next. So this is a similar weekly pumpage for the Honolulu water system. Again, the same time frames are marked in the blue and green arrows. Because we moved Camilo from Honolulu to Aiea, the critical water shortage condition is at 73 million gallons per day. We expect them.
Barry, that's the alert. Alert?
The alert, I'm sorry. Yeah, the alert water shortage condition is 73. Thank you very much. The max day Q95 is at 74. The critical is at 80 MGD. So the difference between the max day demand and the critical water shortage is about 6 million gallons per day. So that's sort of the cushion we have in the system. Next.
Excuse me.
So at the last meeting, there was a request for more information, breakdown of the projected water demands that we have for each of these systems. Our customer care division compiled the building permits and signed construction plans that they've been reviewing and approving as a continuous process. So this is the breakdown. The first is the single family developments. There's 2,084 permits that are undergoing construction and inspection. 306 of the permit applications that are under review. So it just gives you a total. And then, so they're in 3 time frames. What's currently approved or in process to be approved, proposed projects that will start construction in 3 to 5 years, and then proposed projects that would start after 5 years. So there's no definitive time frame. Could be year 6, 7, 8. Just after 5 years. And we did the same thing for multifamily. There's less permits, but they're larger developments. And then there's 11, almost 1,200 permits for commercial permits in this system. The total, when you add it all up in gallons per day, is 5,400,000. Now this is just an estimate. It's subject to change, but this is the compilation that we have up to this point, kind of like the best available information that DPP provided, as well as what we have in our records. So there you can see the totals there in the past 5 years on the right there. And next. Similarly, for the Aiea water system, 58 on the residential, 45 on the commercial. Same types of timeframes currently approved, 3 to 5 years in construction after 5 years, and that total is 1 million. Next. So when we look at it in total, we showed this last month, in the Honolulu water system, 5.4, and our cushion is 6. But when you multiply it by our max day factor of 1.5, it's 8. But most of the potential demand, 2.1, actually not most, but 2.1 MGD of that demand is beyond 5 years. So similarly, IAEA, 1 million total, but most of that 1 million is beyond 5 years. So what this tells us is that we have pumping capacity while we're still in alert. We have additional pumping capacity to accommodate short-term growth, but if we don't get our sources online that replace what we had to take off in that 5 years and beyond, the additional water sources could extend us and get us towards the critical water shortage conditions. So we need to ensure that we put a lot of effort into getting those new sources online within those timeframes. And that's all I have, and I'm turning back to you, Ernie.
Okay, thanks, Barry. Next slide. So just to kind of recap the Red Hill immediate projects and also longer term projects. We mentioned earlier about the 5 to 6 exploratory wells that we're looking to actually replace the capacity of the 3 wells that we currently have shut down. We anticipate it'll probably take at least a couple of years of intense investigation into the aquifer contamination in Halava Valley to get a better understanding what the risks are if we turn on those 3 wells that are shut down. Just in case, if we find out 2 or 3 years from now that we can't turn them on safely, we don't want to waste the 2 to 3 years that we have right now. We want to proceed in parallel to look for new water sources. Under a worst case scenario, that maybe we cannot turn on those 3 wells, Halava wells or IAEA wells. Like Barry said, we need to actually continue to move forward to develop more source capacity to be able to handle at least the expected growth that we can see on the water system based on today's estimates. Installing 4 Sentinel monitoring wells in Halava Valley, and I mentioned earlier that we actually have one of those wells out to bid for finding a drilling contractor to drill that well in Halava Valley. Connecting our Pearl City water system with the Honolulu and IAEA Halava system. This is trying to move excess capacity from other systems into the 2 systems that are short right now. Test pumping some existing wells from Waimalu 2, Kaanohi 2, and Kaomilu pump number 2. Many years ago, like over 3 decades ago, these were shut down because they became too salty to use. So we want to go back after risking these wells and the aquifer at those locations to see if the water has freshened up in the aquifer. Now we might be able to use the water from these 3 wells again. So we're going to do test pumping in those 3 wells. Test pump an existing well that was drilled in Wailainui area above Wailainui Valley area above Kahala Mall. Small capacity well, but we want to see if that can be turned into a viable source. Like Barry mentioned earlier, completing repairs to our Kalihi pump station, Kalawao wells, especially helpful for the Honolulu water system. Getting 3 of the 5 pumps at our Kalihi pump station, which is a 122-year-old facility. It was built in 1900. And also getting 2 of the 3 wells that are out of service at Kalawao back in service. We think that'll give us the additional cushion, along with bringing about 2.5 million gallons a day from our Waipahu area into Honolulu. Continue to expand our conservation programs and outreach because we know that it's worked before. It's worked in Honolulu and island-wide. We know that our customers can kukua and use only water that they need and not waste it. Adjust system operations, like I mentioned, 2.5 million gallons now coming from Waipio. redirecting Honolulu wells to serve Aiea Halawa, which is a more critical system out of the two water systems. Longer term projects like you, thank you for approving the budget. A well field in Ella Shaft, new well field in Kunia, Waikele Gulch, and also continuing our efforts on the seawater desalination plant in Kalanoa. Next, please. So it's really this balancing act between demand and supply here, and trying to make sure that we have enough supply to meet our demands, and it doesn't reverse the other way around, where demand exceeds supply. Then at that time, parts of our water system may run low in pressure or may eventually run out of water. So we want to avoid that from happening. Next, please. So this is actually Barry, I'm going to let you talk about this since this is your draft that you developed, looking at historical evidence of the Honolulu water system. Barry?
Thank you. Water conservation, plays a significant role in decreasing the trend, and this is what this is showing from 2007 to 21. Honolulu's water use went down, and that's through conservation efficiencies. Renovations by plumbing code have to go through water efficiency improvements, high efficiency toilets, and the like. And so we benefit from the conservation that occurred in the past and will continue to occur to keep the pumpages below the existing pump capacities. It also benefits the aquifer. We're pumping less because of that. But this shows a decreasing trend. This is unique to Honolulu. Other smaller systems, actually, with growth, the production rises. And then you see the red line is a polynomial trend line that's starting to flatten. We anticipate that at some point in the future, it'll bottom out as we reach saturation for conservation savings. And then it'll start to increase with new development. So just wanted to stress the importance of conservation and to continue the outreach and the water sensible incentive program to take advantage of the efficiencies that are still possible in such a large system. Ready?
Next, please. So at this point, I'm going to ask Kathleen Pahinui, head of our communications office, to talk about water conservation efforts, an update on that. Kathleen?
Thank you, Manager, Board Chair, Board members. You've all seen this one before. I won't belabor it. Foundation of our conservation program. Next slide, please. Again, we have our Water Smart program. We are going to be working on efforts to amp it up. We've got a little over 5,000 so far signed up, but this is a great way for people to manage their water use. You kind of compare it with your neighbors, maybe have a neighborhood contest. We don't share any personal information, but it allows you to see how you're using water on a regular basis over the month and things like that. Next slide, please. And again, we've talked about our Water Sensible program, commercial rebates, which we're really ramping up with Barry's team. Our contractor, his consultant, Honeywell, is really coming up with a full plate of different options, including commercial rebates on toilets and things like that. We had a very successful first audit with one of our hotel partners last Friday, and that went very well. That included both restaurants as well as looking at ice making machines, things like that. And if it continues to be successful, we will roll it out to the larger group. Food service program, we're meeting with the Hawaii Restaurant Association on June 1st. And with their membership, to remind them not to serve water unless asked for. That's really our biggest control in a restaurant. And of course, go in and check their dishwashers. We have, again, the dishwasher rebate, ice maker rebates, things that we can help them with, aerators and nozzles, stuff like that. Residential rebates still continue. Our clothes washer, weather-based irrigation controller, and rain barrels. We're starting up virtual workshops on our rain barrels again. We will be having our plant sale, which I'm sure we'll probably have a rainbow workshop at that time as well. August 6th is the plant sale if you're interested. Next slide, please. So we've been doing up a lot actually, and we just got a call today from Pamela Young, who's going to do a water saving segment on Sam Choi's show. And we had talked about doing something with with recipes and things. So it's great that that came up of its own accord. Our Hawaii News Now Water Wisdom, I want to thank Board Chair Andaya, Board Member Sproat, for participating in that. We are our YYE newsletter. We've been sending it out every couple of weeks. You can sign up for it on our protectoahuwater.org website. So please do if you haven't already. Social media, we now have a social media toolkit up on our website. So thank you, Board Member Anthony. Our large condo program keeps moving forward. I think we've given out over 5,000 dye tablets in the last month or two, and we're ordering more to keep giving them out. But the condos are actually now calling us, which is great. That's what you want. Instead of us reaching out to them, having us reach back. And that's happening. Again, I mentioned the water audits that we're continuing, the hotel partnership. We're just waiting for the MOA with the Hawaii Community Foundation, so we'll be able to start rolling out that marketing program with them in towards it, ostensibly towards the visitor, but it actually the messaging will resonate with everybody, not just towards the visitor. But we're going to use it in areas that the visitor sees, because again, the two things that people always call us about, well, what are you doing about the visitor industry? And you government agencies waste money. So again, a big shout out to Board Member Butai for all the work DOT is doing to save water. And we have, if you didn't see it last week in the media, the Department of Parks and Recreation has taken a huge step forward and being a really close partner with us on water conservation. They have started a whole suite of initiatives, including running fountains later in the late afternoon, early evening, versus during the day, and only for a short period of time. And the reason they do need to run the fountains is if they don't, the mechanics of the fountain get gummed up, and then down the road you actually have a bigger problem. So we do understand, we want to work with them, and by switching it to later in the late afternoon, early evening, people can enjoy the beautiful fountain, but we're not wasting water through evaporation, things that happen during the hot summer days. If you notice the parks are going brown, please do not complain. That is all part of their effort to manage water irrigation. So we're very, very grateful to them for all of that. They've really stepped up, and Board Member Dawn, thank you again. Came forward and got a bunch of the fountains around Honolulu Holly turned off. We're so very grateful for that effort. And again, it just sends a very positive message to our community when they see these things, that we're doing these things. And then when people call, we're able to say, yes, we are actually doing this as well as everybody else. I think we're looking at doing a series of op-eds through our consultant, our marketing consultant. So we're still working that out. And then we're radio and TV PSAs. I'm proud to announce that one of our radio spots won the silver in the Pele Awards. Those of you who aren't familiar with the Peles, it's the advertising industry's Nahoku Hano Hano Awards. And we got a silver for one of our radio spots. I just found that out today. So Nathan let me know. So a big shout out to Nathan and his team for doing that. That's really nice. We're going to be doing monthly conservation segments with KHON, and then we're going to do a little what the weekly pumpage is on Oahu with KHON, especially for the metro area. So we're just still working out some of those details, but as we get closer to summer, all of these things will come into play, and we'll be doing that little sponsorship. So we really have a lot of things going on all over the place that will really make a difference. Next slide, please. Again, part of it is outreach, the one-on-one. When we sit down and talk to people across the table, it really makes a huge difference. As you saw today, the number of initiatives that Ernie and Jason and Erwin and Barry are all working on right now to find new resources, and to Kevin to move the water around in our system, have been very positively received. We just met with the Hawaii Business Roundtables housing Housing Committee today, and they were very pleased to hear at all the work that the Board of Water Supply is doing, so we're very grateful for that. But as you can see, a whole laundry list of people we're meeting with. We had a great meeting with HTA, and board chair was able to join us that day and say a few words. We're meeting with City Council Committee on Housing Economics tomorrow to give them a brief update. So people are really responding positively, and we're going back out with this more information that allows people to see what those next steps are, where we're headed, what we're doing, and the efforts that we're making on the community's behalf. The other thing I just wanted to share quickly, we videotape, we not only videotape these meetings and post them on our website, but we had live streaming as well. And just so you know, today we've had about 35 people watching. And last month we had about 54 unique viewers who watched at least an hour of the board meeting. So I just wanted to thank the board members for letting these meetings be videotaped, because it really is important to our community. This is another way that people get information from us, such as today's presentation. So thank you for that. They get to see us in action, and that's hugely important. Thank you very much. Next slide, I believe, is now Erwin, if I'm correct. Yes. I will turn it over to Erwin. Thank you very much, unless there are any questions.
Yeah. Are there any questions so far, Chair and board members? Yep.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
If we can go back maybe about 10 slides or so, Ernie, I don't know whether this is for you or for Barry, but I just had a quick question about the Aiea Halava water system. You folks showed, how much water we're using, and I think last month we were at about 3.1, but I understand the Q95 max day demand is like 4. So I'm just curious about what the chlorides are looking like for that system now. Because I didn't see anything in the slides. We were looking at numbers and use, but not chlorides. And I'm worried about that one in particular because it's smaller and there's, less source.
Yeah. Barry?
If you go to the graph, please.
Yeah, a little further back. Next one. One more.
But the chlorides are when I checked them last, they're in pretty good shape. Because we cut back so much in that Waimalu side, Halava Shaft, and that's minus 13 MGD. So they're going to start recovering. Heads, went back up in Halava. So in terms of chlorides, they're normal. They're not excessively high. I don't have the numbers before me, but because of the cutback, they're in better shape than some of the sources in Honolulu.
That's super helpful.
Even at that, Beretania has chlorides improved because we cut back there. So the rains that we had over the last week or so, were helpful as well. It's really what we're going to see this summer. So we need to monitor it.
Great.
Thanks for asking.
No, that's super helpful. Thanks, Barry. And that's why I was wondering, because of what we were seeing in Honolulu, but good news. So thank you.
Thank you, Kapua. Any other questions? Joy, if you could bring up the next presentation as part of this report. I'm going to ask Mr. Erwin Kawata, head of our Water Quality Division, to provide the report.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Manager Lau, and good afternoon. Joy, I'm going to share. Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, board chair and members. Thank you. On May 13th, the Fuel Tank Advisory Committee met to hear a number of different updates by the Navy, Department of Health, and EPA. Today's discussion, we're going to focus on the groundwater aquifer contamination and its status that was provided by the Department of Health. And in this update, what they did was they showed on maps the contaminant distributions in the groundwater over time. And it really reflects various data that the Navy is collecting, both soil vapor, groundwater data, and the maps were prepared for selected time periods. and primarily for showing the maximum value of the contaminant of the different analytes during this period. And of course, the time series of what they call heat maps showing the estimated maximum groundwater contamination amounts existing in the monitor wells from the period about just before May 6th of last year through the end of April of this year. So this includes also that the most recent data provided on Department of Health's website that had about approximately 598 pages. So this is the first map that was showed. It starts prior to and following the May 2021 release. As everyone recalls, the Navy experienced this pressure surge over by tank 18 and 20 on May 6th that released a volume of jet fuel. And here this shows, here this is, these circles here are the tanks themselves. We have the correctional facility, the Halava Industrial Park area. This is H3. Halava Shaft is just off the page here, up in this area up here, past the H3. And then this line here is the Navy's Red Hill Shaft, the development tunnel. And so the areas in where they got data, this is what this plume is showing during this period, shortly right after the release on May 6th. Then from May to July, additional data started to come in. This is what was tracked and plotted by the Department of Health. This area here showing 3,300. This is TPH diesel, which is one of the components in petroleum. This is the monitor well number 2. It was showing 3,300 in micrograms per liter. Of course, this one starts with the cooler colors represent low values up until the higher values depicted in the red to purple hotter colors. And so number of monitor wells showing non-detect here along this area and some detections close by here at monitor well number 2 and close by here. Then we move to August through October. Now we're seeing a lot higher concentrations here. Detections now that was previously not found are now being observed. Some of the wells here on the north western facing side of the tanks. There's some over here on the southeastern side. We have some down here at 670. A detection here and over by the oil waste disposal facility through this period. Now, during this period, as you know, Halava Shaft is pumping. This is during the summer months. So Halava Shaft is pumping at more than 10 mgd, million gallons per day. Red Hill Shaft is also pumping. There was an observation here of about 200, looks like it's 280 micrograms per liter or ppb of TPH diesel. So both these stations are operational during this period. Then through November, this is shortly after Thanksgiving, there was a release occurred here in the lower access tunnel that the Navy reported shortly after Thanksgiving that resulted in that high concentration over 10,000 here, micrograms per liter of TPH diesel. But we also see detections in other monitoring wells that on the northwest facing side of the tanks that was previously shown non-detect. The soil vapor concentrations are also starting to get very elevated. The interesting thing is that while we know that there was a release down in here, what's causing this higher amounts of detections in this particular area over here? Again, we've got elevated numbers here, 1,300, 640 on some of these, and 200 and 300 on these monitor wells on the northwest east facing side, as well as some higher level detections on the southeastern side of the facility. Shortly after this period, as you recall, Halava Shaft was shut down. We shut it down on December 2nd. The Navy also shut down its Red Hill Shaft after, unfortunately, after some of that water entered the the Joint Base Pearl Harbor water system. Moving into February to March, early of this year, at this time, Red Hill Shaft is off. Halava Shaft is off. You can see these detections, a lot of them starting to get less. There is still seeing some higher levels here, 4,100 here at monitor well number 2. Again, at the detections over at Red Hill Shaft, a lot lower. We're going from 10,000 the previous period down to about 420 being recorded here. But again, we continue to see detections over on the monitor wells that are again on the northwest facing side of the tanks as well as on the southeastern side of the tanks. Finally, in April, we continue to see these recording of detections, much lower than previous months, but detections nonetheless. Monitor well number 2 continues to see quite elevated amounts of TPH diesel. So now what they also did was take a look at TPH oil, which is another fraction of the component within petroleum hydrocarbons in fuel. And this was, again, starting prior to the May 6th release. Much bigger areas in terms of much greater amounts of detection here, especially on the northwest facing side of the tanks, as well as the south eastern side of the tanks as well. The question marks over here are areas where, you know, the regulatory agencies are not sure what the color would be or what the amounts are because there are no monitor wells in these particular areas. So these are extrapolations based on the data that was collected both in the monitor wells and the soil vapor data that's collected from underneath the tanks. May through July, again, we see a slightly different pattern. We see some that had detections prior now have no detections. Halava Shaft, again, during this period was operating, as well as Red Hill Shaft was operating. And during this period, 480 micrograms per liter was being observed in Red Hill Shaft. August through October, interestingly, the soil vapor or the concentrations here start to increase just underneath the tanks over here. And we're starting to see slightly more elevated levels in the monitor wells surrounding the facility and the tanks itself, including starting to get some slightly elevated levels over at Red Hill Shaft. Now come to November again, right after Thanksgiving, when the spill occurred here. We see much higher levels in the soil vapor being recorded, as well as the monitor wells for TPH oil. Halava Shaft is now turned off during this period, as well as Red Hill Shaft is turned off. Moving to January, continue to see similar, but now levels starting to get lower slightly. Some continue to persist, but it's interesting to see here that during this time, you know, Halava Shaft is off, but yet you see this detections on the north, continue to see detections on the northwest facing side of the tanks, as well as the Red Hill Shaft here. February through March, a continuation, the plume moving toward the west, as well as indications showing movement towards the northwest towards Halava Shaft. Again, just a reminder, Halava Shaft is is off at this time. So this is all natural groundwater flow. It's not being induced by any kind of pumping. Same condition here as for Red Hill Shaft. And then in April, where we are at the most recent data that was collected and shown. And that concludes the slides. I'd be happy to take any questions.
A quick question, Erwin.
Sure.
There was a report in the news by the Department of Health saying it was migrating across the valley.
Yes.
Is that reflective in the it seems like the furthest it has advanced over the time is just north of the prison. Is that new or is that, that report, was that, I don't understand because it seems like it's migrated to just north of the prison and a little bit down to where the military shaft is.
Mhm.
And that's about it. So is that something new that's not that's been reported? Is that?
Well, a couple of things are happening here concurrently at the same time. First of all, one of the things that's common throughout all of these pictures, and I'll go backwards for TPH oil just to show this, starting from April, moving back into time. One of the things that's very common here is that, number one, you have contamination or detections that are observed underneath the tanks. The contested case demonstrated or proved that there were at least 72 releases over the 80-year history, and that total volume of those releases is about 180,000 gallons. So that 180,000 gallons is sitting very likely underneath these tanks in the unsaturated part of the rocks. So that's number one. Number two, one of the things that the Navy had postulated or had contended was to turn on Halava Shaft to act as a capture zone, to capture all of the contamination and draw it towards Red Hill Shaft, remove that contamination and treat it. The data, however, puts a very different picture. It shows that the contamination can move past Red Hill Shaft, and the Navy had also indicated that there were some geologic features in the subsurface that would prevent it from moving across the valley. So there's two things: contaminant moving across the valley towards Halava Shaft. That's number one. This data indicates clearly that that can happen, even under non-pumping conditions, and it can move past Red Hill Shaft to the west, even under non-pumping conditions. And so the data really strongly suggests that this contamination can be moving away from the tanks, both towards Halava Shaft and going past Red Hill Shaft and beyond. Now, during this period, January here, Red Hill Shaft was turned on. It was disconnected from the Navy's water system, but it's undergoing treatment. The water is being filtered through activated carbon. The water is treated. Any petroleum that's in there removed, and the water is being discharged in Halava Stream. And that pumping action was thought to create what is called a capture zone, draw all this contamination to Red Hill Shaft to use it as a point where the subsurface water could be cleaned. The data indicates that that's not happening. So this data really strongly suggests that the contamination can be moving with the groundwater. Groundwater is moving always from the mountain down to the ocean or to the west. And the contamination that's dissolved in that groundwater can be moving along with it, both towards the west, past Red Hill Shaft, even when it's pumping, and to the northwest, towards Halava Shaft. Obviously, if Halava Shaft is on, the draw of water can become quicker, and this contamination has the potential to move towards Halava Shaft a lot quicker if it was on.
And Max, the other point, and Erwin, you can point this out. These maps were drawn based on existing monitor well locations. There aren't many monitor wells or any in the Halava Valley area. So if there were, then that data could be added to this map and it might show the plume actually extending further. But because there are only these existing monitor wells, which are data points, and physically located fixed location, the plume could be moving, but we wouldn't know it because we don't have enough monitor wells in the valley.
So with our new ones, we should get the
It'll
data.
help to the effort, and I think the EPA is the EPA and DOH has asked the Navy to drill more wells in Halava Valley too.
Okay, thank you, Erwin.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a couple follow-up questions based on that, I guess, and I'll start First, I guess as a follow-up to Max's question and Ernie's follow-up about the timing and I guess the spacing for additional monitor wells. Because I just say, and I should start actually by saying thank you, Erwin and Ernie, for sharing this information. It's shocking and frightening. And to me, I think further underscores the need for continued immediate action by the board and others. So this is not just our Kuleana. I mean, this is everybody's drinking water supply and water future. So I do hope others get involved too. But what is the plan at this point for additional monitoring wells? And I guess I'm asking in light of that May 13th meeting or so, where are we with respect to the additional monitoring wells? Because what I'm very concerned about is this is a partial picture based only on the monitoring wells we have, which we know are insufficient. So what's the plan for getting us a better picture?
First, the Navy received approval to drill 8 more additional monitoring wells that are located within this area here. Of real interest is to put monitor wells inside of the quarry. I just saw some communications from the landowner in this area that is not approving the Navy's installation of monitor wells in this area, but there are monitor wells planned for out in this location as well as within the Halava Industrial Park. We have our Site H well that we do plan to install. That's along this area right over here. There's an access road that leads up to one of our reservoirs, our Harlava 372 reservoir. That's going to be drilled here. We also have one over by the Halava District Park out in this area, as well as the animal quarantine station. We originally had one planned in this area, this area here, due to concerns with drilling noise and impacts on the animals residing there. We're going to move that to out in this area that's currently being reviewed and discussed with Department of Ag. But beyond that, there is lots of discussion that's going on between the Navy and the regulatory agencies to drill monitor wells. Really the challenge is this very high density within this area and the lack of really good places to even put a monitor well, short of going into a public right-of-way area or somehow really disturbing, which they don't want to, disturb a business and their ability to operate.
Yeah, thank you for that, Erwin. I'm remembering different situations like Kirtland, for example, and the number of monitoring wells that had to be drilled there. And just thinking about, because my concern also is about other sources, right? Both BWS sources, and other folks' sources as well, right? I mean, maybe other wells in the area.
One of the things that's of interest and really of concern is obviously on the northwest facing side of the tanks towards Halava Shaft, but on the southeastern side of the tanks as well. We have our Honolulu wells located here. So monitor wells in this area is much fewer than on the western side and the northwestern facing side, primarily because of the terrain that's here. And of course, the high density of homes within this area, but it's all hills. I mean, it's just very steep. The terrain is in this area.
But can I follow up on that, Aaron?
Sure.
Since you mentioned that area towards Mauna Lua well,
Yes.
what is the likelihood, based on what you folks know about the geography, that it might migrate down that way? Is it high or is it kind of low?
As far as the degree of migration, it's pretty hard to determine at this point. The possibility always exists. And so putting in some monitor wells in this particular area is going to be beneficial. And that's one of the things that we're working on also, is to look for areas within the Mauna Lua Valley that we can actually install monitor wells. Until then, because the Navy is really limited by the terrain as to where they can put. I think this is as far southeast as they can go. Beyond that, they're on the edge of the mountainside here. It's very steep here. So looking in this particular area is the next step, and that's one of the things my team is looking at various locations within Mauna Loa as to the best places we can put a monitor well without really inconveniencing the activities and the residents that are there.
Okay, thank you.
I have
Now,
another
go ahead.
follow-up
Mhm,
question
go
really
ahead.
quick. So Erwin, I guess my concern, and maybe it's just my own simplicity and trying to make sure that I understand the data, but I am very concerned about the rising, I mean, what looked to me to be very high levels, both of TPH diesel and then the oil, before the big spill even happened in November, right? I mean, we're seeing that under the tanks already from
Mhm.
August to October.
Yes.
And so I'm just wondering in the meeting, what was the justification that was given for these levels before the big spill?
Well, there was no there. It was observed. It was noted here that before the November spill,
Right.
between the May and the November spill,
Yeah.
they saw these levels here, and it was asked, but there was really no explanation given. I think the regulatory agencies are still trying to assess what that is. We have our own theories as to
Which
where.
are, I would love to hear what your theories are, because I mean, it gives me significant pause about, I mean, if everybody focused on this in November, but we see the levels both for oil, the oil plume and the TPH diesel were already elevated
Before
before
November.
that.
Yes.
When, wells are on, that's a concern. So I'm just
Well,
wondering from a public
well,
safety
here's the
perspective.
theory. Well, in May, right? Remember, we had the May 6th release, right?
Right.
That happened up here, over at tank 18 and 20 area, right? There was a pressure surge, the pipe blew, and there was a fuel release in the lower access tunnel.
Right.
Okay. Approximately 3 to 4 months later, there's this large concentration observed here. The
Yeah.
thinking is that that spill or that release got into the subsurface.
Yeah.
It exceeded the carrying capacity of that vadal zone that had all the previous releases already held in it that occurred over the 80-year history. That's 72 releases at 180,000 gallons, which includes legacy, old bunker fuel types, gasoline, various types of fuels used during, World War II area through the present. That got released here, and that's reflective of TPH oil. That fuel release exceeded the carrying capacity, and that's what caused the soil vapor to now record higher levels in this area. So it actually moved in that 3 to 4 month period. And as you move in time, it spreads further. The groundwater now carries it from the vadal zone. It gets into the groundwater, and the groundwater is now carrying it to these monitor wells. Now you're seeing elevated levels here as well as here. But before November, which the release happened in this part of the development tunnel.
Right.
So in the November observation here, that was TPH diesel, which is reflective of jet fuel, more related to a recent or what is deemed called fresh fuel, as opposed to the one that happened in May, fresh fuel inducing release of older fuels that are held in the vadal zone or in the unsaturated rocks underneath the tanks that cause the carrying capacity of the vadal zone to get exceeded and now released into not only the groundwater, but as well as the soil vapor as well. That's our theory based
And
on
then,
the data and what we understand. And of course, we have to also keep in mind the vadal zone, the unsaturated rock in this entire area, and how it moves is not homogeneous. In other words, it's not even, it's very uneven. So how it moves, when it moves, it can come to a certain point, stop, and then move at a different rate. And how that's actually moving in the subsurface really driven by nature.
Yeah. And I guess that's my concern, Erwin. It's because, we were able to see free product dripping into the aquifer because the
Yes.
Navy divers were there. But now that Red Hill Shaft is pumping, we don't have those contemporaneous observations. And so we don't know exactly what's happening. And that's my concern, is that given the exceedance of the carrying capacity, it could continue to drip, whether
Yeah.
that's oil or something else. And so,
Well, there's a principle in chemistry that, the solutes will always move from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. So the groundwater here that is not contaminated, it's going to move toward those areas and start to spread. It has the potential to spread to other areas of the groundwater that's not contaminated and essentially diffuse. Right. So this area here is all question marks because it's not known. There's no monitor wells in this area to really get an understanding of how much TPH oil in this case is in the subsurface groundwater or even in the vadal zone as well, because there are no monitor wells that actually are, or soil vapor wells that are actually checking the soil vapor or the vapor that's in that subsurface rock.
So last thing, because I'm sure other folks have questions as well, but I just really want to mahalo you, Erwin and Ernie, and everyone else who contributed to the decision to turn off the lava shaft, because we did that before we had all this data. But if you folks hadn't made that decision, we could have very easily contaminated the public's drinking water supply, exactly like the Navy contaminated their own drinking water supply. So I just really want to recognize your folks' work and thank you for your folks' foresight and vision and courage, really, in helping us to stay safe. Mahalo.
You're very welcome, Kapua. Thank you. So thank
All
you.
right, any further questions or anything else? Okay, hearing none, I just wanna chime in, and I would just wanna say, thank you to the entire department, including Manager Lau. I certainly wanna echo the concerns regarding the continued contamination of our precious groundwater resource, which we are, it's everyone's kuleana. But I also want to thank the department for, just kind of working through the challenges that we've had in the last few months. That decision to shut down the Halava Shaft and others, I don't think anyone has questioned that. I think we continue to support that. But it did cause significant amount of problems and pressure on our system. And I'm just really proud of how the department was able to look at different things, redirecting the Kaamila well from the Honolulu system, getting infrastructure repaired and back online, so that it's not so much of a crisis. That delivery system of the water from the underground resource is really our kuleana. So that's, I think, where we really shine here in the last few months. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, I'm going to move on then. Thank you to Ernest, Barry, Kathleen, and Erwin for the presentation. Moving along to item number 2 is the Capital Improvement Program quarterly update. Chair recognizes Mr. Jason Takaka.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon again, Chair Andaya and board members. This is the quarterly report on the capital improvement program for all divisions and is for the quarter ending March 31st, 2022. In the third quarter of FY22, one construction project was awarded for $173,448, and there was also one construction contract completion reported in the third quarter. In the bottom left-hand corner of this report, you see that there are 248 ongoing design contracts and 165 ongoing construction projects. Together, they total over $474 million of work in progress. Next sheet, please. This is the detail of the award and the completions for FY22 third quarter. Next, please. And this graph has been updated to include the FY22 third quarter. The FY22 is shown in black, and it is the line on the very bottom because the current year is trailing all previous fiscal years, indicating a lot of work to be accomplished in the fourth quarter, particularly for the capital projects division. I will tell you that since March 31st, we have already opened bids representing $10 million in awards. Currently, we have out on the street advertisements totaling almost $75 million in CIP construction funding, and another $20 million in consultant contracts are completing negotiation and should be awarded by the end of next week. That is the report for the third quarter, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Members, any questions? If not, I do have one question. Is there a hold currently on all the bids that are supposed to go out before end of fiscal year 2022?
No, we're sending the bids out.
Sending the bids out.
We're putting it out to bid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Just need to encumber it.
Yeah, actually, the way it happens for construction projects, we have to make an award. So we get award to a contractor. For consultant contracts, we actually have to, I think, basically agree on the price and enter into a contract.
Before end of fiscal year.
Well, actually, we have a deadline of June 15th. Because we work with the city Department of Budget and Fiscal Services. We can't give them something on June 30th. Actually, we have to get their deadline to us is June 15th. So
Okay.
we need to close our business down. Finish our business by June 15th.
And finish our business is awarding the contract.
Being able to encumber the contract, which is either award to a contractor, a letter of award, or executing a contract with a design consultant.
Okay.
So June 15th is our deadline. So that's only about, was it about 3 weeks away?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really close.
Yeah, that's what I meant by encumbered, you
Yeah.
at least.
Because if we don't do that, then the money will lapse.
Yeah.
And we'll need to get reprogrammed in a future year.
Okay. All right, any other questions, members? If not, thank you, Mr. Takaki, for the report.
Okay, thank you.
Moving to next item, item number 3 is a financial. Well, before I get to item number 3, I do want to note for the record, board members, Sepcheck did need to leave us.
Yes.
But we still have the required quorum. Let the record so reflect. All right, next item is the financial update for the quarter ended on March 31st, 2022. Chair recognizes Mr. Joe Cooper.
Good afternoon, Chair Andaya, board members. As you said, this is the financial performance report for the third quarter ending March 2022. Next slide, please. Our revenue was $192 million, which was $4 million over our budgeted revenue of $188 million. Our operating costs were $149 million, which was about $12 million under our budgeted cost of $161 million. And so that gives us a net revenue of 44, almost $44 million, which is $16 million over our budgeted net revenue. I think as Ray Lynn and Jason Kaki talked earlier during the budget meeting, anything from the net revenue, any excess in net revenue will move forward and be carried forward into our next operating budget. Next slide, please. These are the major cost drivers of our budget. Personnel is $7 million under budget at $31 million. Supplies and services is $3 million under budget at $41 million. Repairs and miscellaneous costs is $2 million or $3 million under budget at $10 million. Equipment is $1 million under budget. In fact, we've hardly spent anything at all, $100,000 on equipment, but they will be spending more in the final quarter as they hopefully as the supply chain loosens up and the equipment orders come through. And then finally, utilities, which is driven by the electric costs, is $2 million over budget at $20 million. Next slide, please. This is the operating budget prepared by the ESO and reviewed by the specifically by the different divisions, showing some of their comparisons to their independent budget, and they are available to address any questions that the board members have. Hearing none.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, I know that overall we are, I'm sorry, no. I do want to ask about the fixed charges and debt service. So we're 2.1 over budget. Can I get a little bit more detail on that?
Okay, let me see. We're 2 million. We're mostly actually over budget is almost completely on the electrical charges. So water distribution is $2.2 million over budget, which pretty much covers all of the fixed and debt service variance in this amount. The post-employment benefits is really just a timing issue. And so we're really on budget for that. And so some of the other issues, fixed and debt service, which we'll cover in a little bit on another slide or two, is pretty close on budget.
Okay, yeah, I forgot about the electric power. I was concerned more about the debt service. What about the water quality? Is that tied towards, is that consulting or is that Red Hill?
And I will let Erwin Kawada address that question.
Board Chair, yes, that's correct. That's because of Red Hill, both on the legal as well as the exploratory well permitting and accelerated pace to proceed with that work.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Next slide, please. This slide just tries to give us a high-level look at the different cost categories that compose our operating budget. Over on the lower right corner, materials, supplies, and services is our largest cost category at 34% of our budget, or almost $51 million. That's up about $9 million from last year at this time. The next largest category is fixed charges in the upper left. That is 29% of our budget, or almost $43 million. And again, and that one is up about $2 million from last year. The third cost is personnel services at 21%, or just over $31 million. And that is down about $2 million from last year. And then finally, debt service is 16%, or just over $23 million. Our debt service is rising as we incur more debt by issuing revenue bonds. Next slide, please. This slide compares our budget to our actual amount for those categories. And again, you can see that personnel services is under budget due to vacancies. Also, material services and supplies is also under budget, whereas equipment, debt service, and fixed costs, while they have some small variances, are essentially on budget. Next slide, please. This slide presents our operating costs both in general and year-to-date and on a monthly basis. And in general, our operating costs are running below budget. Year-to-date, our operating costs are 7.6% below budget. And we are running closer and closer to our projected budget each year as we refine that method. And then there, you can look at something like the increase in March of the expenditures over the budget is primarily due to different timing differences. And the July variance is primarily due to some water quality contracts. Next slide, please. And finally, this graph shows our revenue on both a monthly basis and a year-to-date basis. And revenues are just over 2% over budget. So we basically call that on budget, and we like it to be just a little bit over budget to give us a little bit of cushion. And so we like that. On a historical basis, our revenues track pretty close to our budget. And consumption did rise above budget in March, as you can see on the far right-hand bar graph. And that was due because we had a pretty dry winter and dry spring. And so consumption rose, and with consumption, our revenue was also able to rise. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to take any other questions or comments.
Members, any questions? If not, thank you very much, Mr. Cooper, for the presentation.
Thank you.
All right, next item, item number 4 is the status update of groundwater levels at all index stations. Chair recognizes Mr. Barry Usagawa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. For April, we had 3 index wells in low groundwater status. Wailua was in caution, Kamaki and Honolulu are in alert. The pumpage for April was about 137 million gallons per day. In terms of rainfall, 71% in April. 5-month moving average is still 110% because it's still capturing December's rainfall. I think next month it'll be a much lower with the current trends. The National Weather Service is forecasting below normal rainfall through October. And then head levels are correspondingly on the decreasing level. If you could go to the last slide, I can show you the rainfall and the pumpage. Yeah, so the rainfall is 71%. When we capture the May one, it'll kick out to December, and you'll see the average line probably drop. In terms of pumpage, this is island-wide. The pumpage for that we saw in 2006, which is the green, 2022, I mean, this year, is much higher, which is the green line, higher than the blue, which is last year, and the gray was the 5-year monthly average. So it just shows that the summer months were drier and the pump production was higher as a result. we'll continue to monitor it and report every month. And that's my report.
Yes, members, any questions?
So very quick question, sorry, what was 2021 for April? What was the pumpage?
It's right under the gray, so it was about 130, I guess 133. So
Okay.
3 million under, what we saw in April this year. Yeah.
Okay, so not as drastic as, oh, hello, I'm looking at the wrong place. Okay, I see. But less
Yeah.
drastic than last month, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it started to level off, but yeah, it does show that last year it was a wetter winter, so production was much lower.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions? If not, thank you very much for the report. Thank
you.
All right, moving on. Last item. This is item number 5. Water main repair report for April 2022. Chair recognizes Mr. Jason Nikaido.
Everybody's favorite traffic jam.
Good afternoon, board chair and members. This is the main repair report for April. In April, we had 30 main breaks, which brings us to a total of 323 for the year to date. We are on track for slightly higher than average. Will probably be around the 360, 370 mark, which is not significantly higher, but still higher than previous years and not as high as the highest we've ever seen, which was about 400. And this is probably due to, you can see a couple months early on in the year, we had really high numbers in October and December that probably contributed to the higher than normal main breaks for the year. Okay. Next slide. Here's a list of all the main breaks, the 30 main breaks for April. Some 12-inch, but mostly the smaller diameter, 6 and 8-inch. Okay, next slide. And here's the leak detection for April. The leak detection team investigated 41 points of interest for 403 for the year, and they found 50 leaks in April for 616 for the year to date. So that's well above last year. So they're kind of in their groove now as far as getting the procedures down, using the satellite detection and their equipment. I would like to point out that we also found leaks working with government agencies. So we were able to find leaks at Alawai Golf Course and Ala Moana Park, and worked with Department of Enterprise Services and Parks and Recs to address those leaks. Okay, that concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, but you made mention of the satellite, the use of the satellite. How's that working out? Pretty good?
Yeah, this is all entirely based on the satellite.
Oh, okay, okay. So it's pretty, I mean, pretty accurate to what they advertise, huh?
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's all.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I know, it's still trying to figure that out.
No. But it's really improved our efficiency, and the leak detection team are doing a great job with Jason.
Yeah, good job. All right. Thank you, Mr. Nikaido, for the report. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our agenda. It appears we don't have any executive session items today. I think we might just have the approval of the minutes, but we figured that can wait till when we have actual business in the executive committee. All right, executive session, actually. All right, may I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Shall I make it a clean sweep and make that motion, 3 to 4?
As well.
Second.
That was a quick second, actually. All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Say nay. All right, I think the ayes have it. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy your week, and thank you very much. We'll see you next month.
Thank you, everybody. Aloha.
Bye.
Aloha.